This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Welcome to Uncorking a Story, the podcast that introduces you to the rich world of storytellers who share their personal journeys, creative processes, and the stories behind their stories, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and I'm thrilled to be part of your writing journey. If you're an aspiring writer, a literary enthusiast, or simply someone who believes in the transformative power of words, you've come to the right place. Every week, we'll pop the cork on the world of successful storytellers and give you a healthy pour of inspiration, insight, and empowerment. My mission is to help writers like you realize your full potential through the transformative and therapeutic power of writing. Whether you're just starting your literary voyage or looking to refine your craft, I'm here to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement you need to embark on your own storytelling adventure. So, are you ready to uncork your story and let your creativity flow? Uncorking a Story is about to begin. Sit back, relax, and let the transformative magic of storytelling whisk you away. Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Jared Gleaton is a nationally certified school psychologist and known for his captivating food reviews. He invites readers on a tantalizing journey through diverse culinary landscapes, where each review becomes a portal into the intricate tapestry of delights where psychology and food intersect. Joining me to talk about his book, A Feast for the Senses, The Psychological Art of Eating Well, is Jared Gleaton. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Jared.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm happy to have you here, Jared. I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
Well, when it really first started on social media, where I am a huge foodie, and that was cultivated early on. And about 2 years ago, I was really trying to find the best restaurants in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because at the time, Oklahoma wasn't really known for its food scene. And so I was looking through TripAdvisor, Google, and Yelp. And what I realized is you had these 5-star reviews, but people would always write, well, this is good, this is bad, parking sucked, 1 star. And it didn't tell me anything about the food. It didn't tell me anything about the experience. So I went into intricate detail where I started to do a review. I described each dish. I described the service. I described the ambiance, because I wanted the reader to be able to close their eyes and envision themselves right beside me. And that's sort of what took off. And that started my delve into writing.
All right, so it starts with social media, and then when does the sort of the notion hit you that, hey, I should write a book about this?
Actually, through rejection. So my reviews were more like from the old days, like Ruth Reichel, Gail Green. I would critique. It wouldn't come from a place of maliciousness. If something was oversalted, I'd said it leaned heavily on the salted side, and so that has been lost. And a lot of reviews these days just focus on the interview of the chef, the culture behind it, but doesn't really talk about the cuisine in depth. And so I built up a following over a year, and then I reached out to several publications. And each one of them, reached out to Eater, New York Times, local magazines, and nobody replied. Finally, a local newspaper writer that's the food critic for the local newspaper replied and said, people aren't interested in what you're doing. You might just do a niche. What you're doing on social media, that's fine. You need to be more clear and concise. People just want to know what's open, what's closed, was it good or was it bad? And to me, you get plenty of that. You just go to Yelp if you want that. So I thought, all right, well, if a publication doesn't want me, why don't I write a book and detail my journey from the start of my love affair with food to me gaining 376 pounds, my relationship with my father, losing my father, losing 176 pounds. And during that journey, I used food as a coping mechanism in a healthy way to explore my environment. And that's how I wrote the book.
Interesting.
Is taking everything and bringing it together.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then I know in that intro I read you are a school psychologist. I'm curious, this intersection between psychology and food, I'm curious about, but I'm also curious about like the backstory here. So when did your fascination with food begin?
It began at an early age. My father would make Pennsylvania Dutch cooking, whoopie pies, pecan pie, pumpkin pies. But the thing is, and this goes back to just the intersection of food and psychology, there was no moderation growing up. So you'd eat a whole pie. I called my dad the pie fiend, and that's where I learned a lot of my poor overeating decisions. And so that's where my love affair with food began. And as I grew up, I was fortunate enough to be in a family that gave me access to Michelin quality restaurants. And so I really started to develop a more intricate palate by going to places like Alinea, Bernardine, um, uh, a place called Goosefoot in Chicago, Spaggia, the Purple Pig, Atelier Cren, and that really opened up my palate to amazing flavors and textures that I thought I would never ever discover on my own.
Right. But it sounds like that also came with a little bit of weight gain.
That did, because again, no moderation. And this is what looks at the intersection of psychology and food. All the things that go into are the decisions we make with food. And so by the time I was right at 31 in 2016, I weighed about 376 pounds. And I realized, it was just right after I got back from Chicago. I just got done eating at a place called Smith. That I came back. I lost my father before I came back. And when I looked down, I realized I couldn't see certain appendages and I couldn't see my feet when I went to the bathroom anymore. And that's when I realized a change needed to happen, and a change needed to happen immediately. And so I lost my immortality of youth at 31, so to speak.
So how did you go about losing the weight? Because it's almost like, I don't know, like an occupational hazard, I guess, if you are a foodie. How do you and that's, I mean, obviously there is a close relationship between, what you're eating, how much you're eating,
Yep.
and what your weight is. Now it's not a perfect linear relationship, but how did you go about the process of losing, what you said, 176 pounds?
Yes, I lost 176 pounds in 1 year. But the first and foremost that we have to realize is I came to the sad realization is millions of dollars are spent on diet pills that say you'll lose X amount of weight if you take this every day. As Americans, we want instant results. We want results yesterday, and we want the easy way. And after doing reading in medical journals and studies, I realized the sad reality, and this doesn't apply to all people because there are conditions like thyroid conditions, metabolism conditions that make it harder, but ultimately, your body burns a certain amount of calories each and every day just sitting there. If you sit there and do nothing, your body is burning calories, because calories are nothing but a form of energy. If your body does not burn the calories that you eat, it stores it as fat for use later, or it just keeps it on you. And your body is very efficient at storing calories. It loves to store calories. So what I realized was there's two ways that I need to lose weight. One, I need to figure out approximately how many calories I'm burning just sitting around doing nothing. And then once I know that, I know how many calories I can consume. So I'm going to lose weight by restricting the amount of calories my body needs each day, or burning more calories than I eat through exercise. And so I restricted calories and I did exercise every day to get to my weight that I wanted.
Okay. So that's like classic, work out and eat less. I mean,
Work out, eat less. But the key is this, and this is where I think we fail so much, is I didn't deny myself the foods that I loved, but I did engaged in moderation and portion control. I would slow down the foods that I loved, eat them more slowly, and really discover the textures, the flavors, where it hit on my tongue, where it hit on the palate. And then I really try and discover each bite on its own to really enhance and savor the moment, because I wasn't going to eat as much. And so I was trying to reverse a trend where all my life I have conditioned through society and my habits through the environment: eat everything, eat everything, eat everything. Finish your plate, finish your plate, finish your plate. Food is good. X amount of food for this price means it's good. And that all those things that start at early marketing, that start at the grocery store with packaging, I really discovered about 2 years into, especially after I lost the weight, do I really like the food that I like, or have I been conditioned to like what these companies, what the society wants me to like? And that was very unsettling, because I had no freedom in what I liked. Food had controlled me. The grocery store had controlled me. The restaurants had controlled me. And I wanted to break free of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to somebody who started his career in advertising, and
You know then.
we kind of know it, and specifically in consumer insights and shopper insights. We know it's a science. The cues to use in packaging. What to say, what to repeat.
Yep.
Even jingles. I
Yes.
could sing jingles from commercials I remember from the 80s.
Yep.
And, there is a fair amount of that in there, in terms of like how the word manipulate is probably not too strong of a word to use here. How we
No,
manipulate the decisions people make at shelf, to go to those boxed items, those processed items. And those aren't, we know that they're not the best things to put in our body.
no. And that goes back to think about the depression is where we really had the idea of you need to finish on everything on your plate. But we took that idea of finish everything, eat everything, you need to be grateful for what you have, starving kids in other countries. That's prevailed to this day. So it went from the depression to remember TV dinners? They were all the rage. Well, TV dinners turned into boxed dinners for X amount of price. And then the boxed dinners, a lot amount for a cheap price, still finish it, not exactly the healthiest, but all the research that goes into the flavor profiles of those things to get you to be addicted to those flavor profiles. There's a reason Oreos, well, you eat, or the Oreos aren't very good, but by golly, your taste buds are saying, "Ooh, this hits something. This hits something."
That's
Same
right.
with Reese's.
Right.
So we are trapped in that pattern because now my grandparents grew up in the Depression. My parents grew up in TV now box dinners, and so if that's what you grew up on, you're not necessarily going to follow the trend of, well, let's swap out for some fresh vegetables. Let's see what beef tastes like that's all natural from a butcher shop. It's let's see what, if you look at Tyson chicken versus a chicken from a local farm, color is different, the size of the meat's different, the flavor profile is a little different. It's truly remarkable, but that's lost upon us, and I feel though it's starting to come back slowly.
Yeah. The other difference, between like now and like depression era is, we were just more physically active back then. Like
We were.
our jobs required more physical activity.
Yep.
Maybe we walked to work and instead of, driving.
Yep.
So like we are just like we become a little bit more sedentary, and that combined with
Yep.
different dietary choices, it's really no wonder why there is an obesity epidemic
Yep.
in America, and why now these weight loss drugs, which I know have been working miracles for many people, are becoming so popular. I mean, it was very hard to even find, if you had a prescription for, these GLP-1s, which I've been
Semaglutide.
tracking a little bit, you can't get them filled because there was so much of a demand for them.
Well, let's unpack that. What does and so you've done some research. So what, and this is the sad reality, and a lot of people don't realize this because they're still looking for Ozempic, semaglutide, GLP-1. That's the magic pill, right? But what is it doing? What does it do? How does it help people lose weight? It does two main things. One, it suppresses your appetite. It suppresses the chemicals that goes to your brain saying you're hungry. Two, slows the digestion so you're full longer. The issue becomes if you don't address the underlying psychological issues and environmental concerns that got you to that weight, unless your goal or your plan is to be on those drugs your entire life, if you don't make changes and recognize those things, when you get off of those drugs, you're going to be in for a rude awakening because it's not changing the underlying psychological condition. It's just changing the biology not to eat as much. So you're just, in fact, restricting calories, which is why you're losing weight.
Yeah, it's sort of the dietary equivalent of being a dry drunk, meaning, you might stop drinking or, taking whatever recreational substances you're taking, but if you're not addressing the underlying reasons why you started doing that in the first place, then you're just going to, start up again.
And it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to get into an even more vicious cycle because it's like, why is it coming back if you don't understand the mechanism? Remember, it wasn't a drug, but it was all the rage in the 90s. Slim Fast.
Oh, sure. I used to work for the company that made Slim Fast.
So I thought that was a brilliant, successful product, because if you just drank the amount of cans that they recommended, so they figure, I'm sure you guys figured out what the average person has, their basal metabolic rate each day. If you say drink this many cans, for the majority of people, you're restricting the calories. If that's all they do, they're going to lose weight. But what happens when they stop Slim Fast?
Yeah.
Same thing as what's going to happen when they stop Ozempic.
Yeah. We used to say shake, shake, sensible meal. That was the, yeah, that was a little pitch line
But
from the commercials. And
absolutely,
Fabio was the pitch man for it.
yes, and it's not even that Slim Fast. The reason why Slim Fast was so good because it was X amount of calories in a can. It was controlled. You were controlling how much you were putting in your body, and if you stuck to what Slim Fast recommended, you're probably going to lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah. But I started my own weight loss journey back in 2019. I had started doing stand-up comedy.
Oh,
And
awesome.
as part of that, I would record every one of my sets, going to open mics and things like that. And so this was January of 2019, so the year before the pandemic. And I looked at myself on stage and I'm like, who is that guy? I weighed at the time 220 pounds,
Oof.
which was a lot on 5'10". Um,
Yep.
and I was a lifelong runner and I was still running. I was still like, very active, but it was just like what I was putting in my body and how much of it, um, and what I was drinking too. Like I was no stranger to enjoying a few glasses of wine every night. So that certainly didn't help, but I started doing something different than you. So like you didn't stop the things that you liked. You just did them in more moderation. I completely cut out for 2 months sugar out of my diet. Anything
Mhm.
sugar related, processed, no soda,
Good.
no pasta, no breads, like all of that stuff. And I'm half Italian, so cutting out pasta and pizza was a challenge. But like the pounds like flew off me by
Absolutely.
October of that year. Only 10 months later, I had lost 40 pounds. So
Good.
going down from 220 to 180, now is back feeling like I did in college. And then the pandemic comes, and I'm like, you know what? And then my wife had gotten very sick during that time, not with COVID, but with something
Sorry.
else. So it was like, oh my gosh. Then I was like, I'm like, yeah, a little pasta won't kill me. And then I go back to, and then boom, the weight, it didn't all come back. But I boomeranged a little bit, and then I had
Yeah.
to, work hard to get it off again. But it is a hard thing to just because food is so, we need it to live, and
Food is us.
it is.
Well, and that's sort of, there's two ways, there's so many ways to do this. And my method is going to be the best for everyone. I just know it's tried and true. The reason why I didn't cut things out, and I will say this, if you cut out X, this, and this is the thing about carbs are energy as well. They're needed. Good. There are good carbs, there are bad carbs, there are good fats, there are bad fats. The reason why I didn't cut anything out is because unless I'm really willing to cut them out the rest of my life, then I'm just going to be setting myself up for failure. If I can change to still enjoy those simple pleasures and not try and deny myself them, then I'm more likely for success, I realize. Because it's just like if you cut out the one thing that you love all your life and you go back to it, you're going to probably binge on it, just like you said, the boomerang. So you could have, if you would have done it, how would it maybe have gone if you would have had pasta, but instead of the pasta portion size, you had a third less. And that time you still would have enjoyed that pasta that you grew up with and just and again in the moderation. And that's why I decided to take that, is because I knew, and I had a conversation with myself, is that the things that I love, I would have a difficult time releasing them cold turkey. But if I could control how much I put in, then I was in control of the situation and I knew it would be okay. But the key to everything that I realized, I had to have the strength to forgive myself and realize that some days were going to be harder than others. And if I overate a day, I've learned to forgive myself. And that just means we're going to try harder the next day.
Yeah, you got to give yourself a little grace, you
Absolutely.
do. But it's like I know people who have gone to rehab, and
Yep.
they say that, hey, the hardest thing, in the beginning is just that anxiety over knowing that I'm never going to be able to drink again.
Yes.
And that is hard, but there's a difference here. Like, they might be putting themselves and other people in some grave danger because of that behavior. We're not putting ourselves necessarily in grave danger when we're thinking about the cannoli. Um, but maybe your heart might say something different to that. I don't know. But there is a difference there, but it does get down to the same thing though, right? It's like I'm putting something in my body that I'm craving, that I want. Um, yeah, it's just hard to give some of that stuff up.
Absolutely. And so then we unpack, all right, well, if you have one cannoli, that's probably okay, but what is the underlying cause condition of why you would want two cannolis? If you wanted, what's the condition of why do you want 6 or 8 ounces of pasta instead of just one serving at 4 or 2? What is the 2 ounces dry? What is the underlying need for more? And if you slow down and eat slower and really appreciate it, you're getting your mind off of you need more and you're full, or you're not full, and you'll start to fill up and not need to eat as much because you get it in your stomach, it's digesting instead of let me full before my body even realizes, okay, we're getting full here. So it's just about that slowing down and savoring the flavor, but finding that strength and realizing the anxiety just under a bite of food. I applied that strength to other parts of my life to work on myself, and it all started with food. And so instead of emotional eating, I used the strength to say, all right, I stopped. I figured out what the underlying anxiety was to why I need more. What about the next time I want to do my taxes? I'm just giving a bad example there. Or if I'm struggling to fall asleep, coming up with give the name to the anxiety, give the name to the nagging feeling, and then write down what it is. Write down what the worst situation could be if that feeling comes to pass, and then come up with 2 things you can do to overcome that moment. And that's what I did through food and other parts of my life now.
Yeah, it's almost like the baby steps approach to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So it starts with food, but then it's really neat how you sort of extended that to other areas of life. Um,
Uh,
and I noticed you said want to do your taxes. God bless you if you're ever in a situation where you want to do your taxes because
well, this is a weird thing. I like to do my taxes because I want to get it over with. I want to get it over with. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to file early. I want to, and that's sort of where I come to the rationale. I want to do my taxes just because I don't want to have to sit there and worry about it as the deadline comes closer.
yeah, no, that's I typically owe these years, so it's like
That's fair.
the last thing I want to do is. But then again, I just hand them all off to my accountant who works wonders for me in that regard. Um, what would you say the biggest things you've learned about yourself by putting the book together and sort of going through the publishing process? I'm curious as to kind of what any big insights into your life just by because I know how I've written 8 or 9 books, um, so I know like it takes a lot of time and energy, and a lot of yourself goes into every page. So I'm curious, like if you walked away from this experience with any big insights.
So I'm not so sure into the writing was easy because it was really about me and it was getting the message across. So the content was for me was fairly straightforward. And I really love to talk about bias. I love to talk about weight loss. I love to talk about reviews. I love to talk about food. So it was a passion. I think the big thing in the anxiety was knowing all the things that go into a book and not knowing what I didn't know. It was a learning experience. It was an expensive learning experience because I realized that not all editors are created equal. Not all editors do a good job. And I learned the hard way what a vanity publisher is. And by the time I learned what a vanity publisher is, it was very expensive. I had to get out from under that. I learned the importance of marketing. I learned the importance of reviews. I learned the importance of self-publishing, if you can, saves a tremendous amount of money. And it's not hard. And I realized any anxieties you have, take a moment, write it out step by step, and accomplish each step before moving on to the next step. You don't want to try to do it all at once. And so what I realized, it really empowered me to explore these things on my own. And it sadly made me realize the vanity publisher was probably the biggest lesson, to be perfectly honest.
Well, there is a learning curve, especially with the first one. And there are a lot of vultures out there
Yep.
who are, preying on, first time authors, people who have that dream. And it sounds like you may not make that mistake again.
No, what I, you know, when I stopped and think, people were all like, well, you don't want to sign with a publisher where they say you're only going to get 10 or 15% per book sale. What they don't tell you is they're probably they are investing in you because, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, but they want the book to succeed because they're going to make money on it. So they have an investment in there. Now, you're not going to make probably millions of dollars or what you think it is, but you're going to make something. Whereas a vanity publisher, what I realized is the sad reality is you pay them up front. What is their incentive to do anything other than probably publish the book in the same manner you're going to publish it through KDP or Lightning Source or Ingram Sparks? And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And they're just going to use those same distribution networks as well.
They do. And then if you want to get out from under that, trying to get them to stop the distribution of the book, take it down, all of those things is like pulling teeth. And the product, they say you retain all the rights, but it's not necessarily your book. I couldn't go on there and do SEO stuff. I could not do any type of real marketing. I could not do A+ content. I couldn't do anything. And what I realized is the vanity publisher had no idea what any of that was. They were old school. They had published books themselves, but they hadn't done all of that stuff before.
Yeah.
And by the time I tried to wrest control back, it's thousands of dollars down the drain, and then I had to just do it on my own again. So
yeah.
that was I'm sure you've heard this story before.
once or twice. But again, it is one of those things you only have to learn once. And then but now you've got a new skill set for if you ever think about bringing another one to market.
I definitely do. I definitely want to hone in on just the psychology of the weight loss more so than the food critic part from that. And I really would want to write a book about that, because while, like you said, calorie restriction and calorie burning are tried and true methods, I feel that that's lost these days lost to the marketing of this pill, Ozempic, bariatric surgery, and all of these things are drowning out the simple math equation. But I'm not sure that people necessarily want to hear the math equation.
That's the trick, right? So, we as humans want the bright, shiny, easy, convenient solution.
Yeah.
The work hard. What did Hulk Hogan used to say? Train, say your prayers, take your vitamins. Like the roll up your sleeves and do it approach, where you're losing a pound a week, maybe, or a couple pounds a month. We want to see results fast. We don't want to work too hard at it. But easy come is easy go.
Yep.
So
how I was able to I started losing about 5 pounds a week. And whenever I started to, when I went through 2 weeks of I didn't lose anything, I hit the plateau. And what I realized was my body adjusted. So I needed to burn a little bit more and I needed to eat a little bit less. And so I never really hit the plateau. But where I really became addicted was because I trusted the numbers. I became addicted to seeing and mapping out everything through a spreadsheet and seeing it result on the scale. It was almost addictive to say, oh my goodness, here's a half a pound. Well, if I cut out another 200 calories here and burn another 200 calories, I might lose an extra pound a week. And that's exactly what happened. So seeing that math on paper translate to the scale was so intoxicating for me. And it drove me to want to do it more.
Yeah. Well, there's motivation there, right?
Yes.
But it's also you taking control over your life.
That's right.
And that's what we love. We love, and a lot of people get into eating disorders.
Yep.
Because they want to feel control. Like it's one area of their life where they can control. So it is maybe a little bit of a slippery slope there.
Oh, it absolutely is. And like you say, it's the eating disorder. And that's the thing is we think we're in control, but the reason you're a disorder is because you're out of control of the behavior. Eating disorder is just the antithesis of obesity.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to refer to the eating disorder as Ed.
Yes.
I don't like Ed. I used to have to compete with Ed, and I don't like Ed.
Well, don't let Ed win. And that's the interesting things on the polls. You have the polls again: obesity, eating disorder, and we're always trying to find that middle ground. That's what's hard for us to do because Americans as society are polarized to one side or the other. Extremes. Yeah. We love our extremes. We don't like the middle for some reason.
Yeah, that is that comes to light certainly during election years.
Oh, it's very interesting. And what I find is a lot of people, when I talk to them about politics, they're fairly moderate until they get on social media, and then by golly, extreme comes around with
Oh
social
God. Well,
media.
it's the keyboard warriors, right? You know, you're
Yes.
saying it to somebody's face, you're saying it from behind
Yep.
the screen of your iPhone or whatever device you're using.
The protection.
Yeah, and then courage comes. Um, but I digress. I'm curious, Jared. I know you're a big foodie, but like if we were to take a walk down memory lane for a minute, maybe go into our childhoods, what were some of your favorite junk foods?
Oh, my favorite junk foods. Oh my goodness. Reese's peanut butter cups. Oh, I could still eat a Reese's peanut butter cup. Kraft macaroni and cheese. Not that
Oh,
it was, not that it's good, but because I was denied Kraft macaroni and cheese, and my dad would make real macaroni and cheese, and it was one of those deals where that formula, that yellow formula, hit on all the right places. I don't want to say it's junk food, but Maine, growing up in Maine, the Chinese food there is completely different, and they had something called poo poo platter,
mhm.
and that poo poo platter still
Talk about
tastes good.
something that needs new branding though, because that just does not sound appetizing.
I know it
It
does
doesn't
need new
sound appetizing.
branding, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. It was red chashu pork. It was teriyaki meat on a stick. It was some deep fried chicken. Oh, so good. But it does need some branding.
We
But
had a crappy Italian chain on the East Coast called what was it called? Not Papa John's. It was Papa Gino's. Papa
oh,
Gino's. Papa Gino's. And like when we were in college, my wife and I met in college. When we were in college, there was a Papa Gino's, about 10 miles down the road, and we went to a very rural school, like literally cows on campus. And we would go to Papa Gino's because we were just sick of the dorms, and they had something called the Papa Platter. And the Papa Platter, I believe it was like two ravioli, a plate of pasta, and two meatballs. And man, I thought I died and went to heaven when I had a little Papa Platter. But I had it, I don't know, about 10 years ago. We were on a road trip. We saw one, stopped in, got one. Did not hit the same way as it did in 1992. That's for sure. Yeah, because your taste buds do change over time.
they do, and it's interesting as they fatigue, as your sense of smell changes, as your hearing changes, it all as your texture, taste buds, it all changes. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. And also as your psychological condition changes. I'm a big advocate when you go into a restaurant. If you, especially these days, if you go to a restaurant and it's loud, and you don't like loud places, your anxiety spikes and your sense of taste dulls. So you're not going to enjoy the food because you're hyper focused on your anxiety for the crowd.
Yeah.
And so these are all things that I really touch on and talk about because it all impacts your dining experience, and your worldview.
Yeah. I remember so when we had kids, more junk food came into the house. And I remember like having something like children's cereal, right?
Yeah.
Um, like having a bowl of like, I don't know, it was Cocoa Pebbles or something, and it's like it just didn't taste anywhere nearly as good to me as it did when I was a kid. And then I was wondering, God, I wonder if the formula is different, and sometimes they do change formulas, but then I was thinking like maybe I'm just older now, and maybe I just don't like it.
Well,
I don't know.
they could have changed the formula. I just was reading the other day. Frito Lay's was changing the size of the bags,
Well, they do that. They do that. They put
and
more sugar in sometimes too.
they do, and increase. I think what's that, bagflation or something inflation, or where they decrease the size of the bag but keep the price the same.
That's right. That's right.
But they evidently backpedaled that after some vicious backlash.
Yeah. Well, it happens. There's a lot of games that consumer packaged goods companies have to play. But I digress. I'll put my that's me putting my work hat on, and I don't want to do that here.
I understand.
Um, I'm curious. One of the ways I like to get to know my guests a little bit more is through pop culture questions. So, Jared, I'm curious. When you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV?
On TV, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 80s version, the cartoon Beetlejuice. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was hitting its stride. Dragon Ball Z was on Cartoon Network at that time. That growing up, early childhood, that is what I was all about. Whenever the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action movie came out, oh, I was in heaven. I still watch that to this day.
Yeah, that was, I mean, maybe it doesn't hold up as well with the special effects. But I remember waiting for that movie too, because I loved the original cartoon. Um, I thought that was my friend Rob was a big fan of the comic book, so he knew all about them before the cartoon came out. But what about music? What'd you like listening to growing up?
So I don't remember too much under the age of 10, but I think, after my parents divorced, I went through that rebellious stage in Corn, Limp Bizkit, really was resonated with me. Slipknot at that preteen, teenage age. It wasn't until I got a little older that I appreciated more classical music. I never got into the pop. I never got into Britney Spears or NSYNC, but it was the Corn, that the metal. I was all about the metal.
Okay, now I'm curious about some of those '90s, harder bands.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little bit older than you, and my wheelhouse was like Iron Maiden, to some of the more classic metal bands, and then I know, Limp Bizkit and Slipknot. And I have a hard time, and I remember listening to them in the '90s, but I have a hard time enjoying them now. Whereas like my Maiden, I'm seeing them next month. Um, but but does it hold up for you, that sort of '90s version of metal?
No, it doesn't. If I'm going to listen to some, I've actually changed my tune. These days, I like Shakira. I don't know what to say about that. I like some of the new Charlie XCX. I like. My tastes have changed. If I want rock, I want Breaking Benjamin. I've gone back to appreciate some of the Bon Jovi songs, White Snake. I've actually the '90s rock is what I listen to the least nowadays.
Yeah.
I really like the catchy, uplifting, and upbeating songs.
So I think you mentioned you're from Oklahoma, or you're living in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Have you ever been to Rocklahoma in the
I
summer?
have, I have, but it was a while ago.
Because I know some of those nostalgic bands from back in my day tend to show up at Rocklahoma.
Yes, they do. Right now, I haven't been to anything in a while. I've been focusing primarily on the foodie tour stuff.
Yeah.
So I know Oktoberfest is going on, and USA Today ranked Oklahoma's Oktoberfest as #1 in the United States, I think.
That
I
surprises me.
that I was shocked, or something like that.
Yeah. Interesting. If you could go back in time and whisper some words of advice into your younger self's ear, maybe it's the kid who's listening to Slipknot or Fred Durst, Limp Bizkit. What would you tell the younger Jared?
Well, I understand the theme behind the question, but honestly, what I would tell younger Jared is take your $30,000 for college, and in 2003, invest all of it in NVIDIA stock, and don't touch it. Don't say a word. Leave it there and sell it all today. That's what I would tell myself. Now, that's not what you want to hear, because I'm gonna be honest. I'm not going to remember whatever the lottery ticket was, but I can say invest in NVIDIA. Matter of fact, I would go back. I would steal my own money to do that.
There you
But
go.
no, if I was going to give advice, I would say stop, slow down, think before you act. You will be happier.
There you
And I
go.
would not have listened to it. Not a chance. Not a chance.
Well, that's you'd probably be freaked out too if like your older self is coming to visit you. It's just
Yes, I
putting
would be
that out
freaked
there.
out. But I know that the stock or the lottery isn't, but I've used on that more than once or twice. What might I tell my younger self? And I would just buy this, please, and don't touch it. Don't even go in there and look at it. Just open it up 30 years later and be happy.
Jared, where can people learn more about you? Do you have a website, or do you have active social media accounts?
Yes, so you can find me at www.jaredgleatoneats.com is my website. You can follow I do food reviews, video reviews on YouTube at Jared Gleaton. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm very active on Facebook at Jared Gleaton Eats. And then my book is on Amazon, ebook, audiobook, hardback, paperback, Jared Gleaton Eats, A Feast for the Senses, The Psychological Art of Eating Well.
Well, you got all grounds covered there, Jared.
Thank you so much.
So I want to thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.